Enjoy listening. Marina and Alexei Sergeyev were married for 5 years. The two-bedroom apartment, purchased with a mortgage in Marina's name before their marriage, was their cozy nest. The first 3 years of their marriage seemed rosy. They both worked, planned to have children, and saved for a car. Marina worked as a designer in a small studio. Alexei was a mid-level manager at a construction company. Marina lovingly furnished the apartment. Every item had its place. Every corner was thoughtfully designed. Light walls, minimalist furniture, fluffy carpets. All this created a special atmosphere of warmth and comfort. Marina loved coming home after work, making tea, and curling up on the sofa with a book or a TV show. Everything changed one autumn day when Alexei returned from work, unusually excited. "Have news." He rubbed his hands nervously. Mom called. A pipe burst in her apartment, flooding the entire kitchen and part of the room. The repairs will take about 2 weeks. "So what do you suggest?" Marina asked, already anticipating the answer. "Let him stay with us for a week or two until everything gets better." Alexei looked at her hopefully. "You know, she's alone since her father's death, and it's hard for her." Marina sighed. She had a strained relationship with Tamara Nikolaevna. From the first day they met, her mother-in-law made it clear that her daughter-in-law wasn't good enough for her son. Sometimes she didn't cook right, sometimes she dressed vulgarly, sometimes she was too preoccupied with her career. But refusing to help in such a situation was impossible. "Fine," Marina reluctantly agreed. "Just for a week, 2 at most." The next day, Tamara Nikolaevna appeared on the threshold of their apartment with 2 enormous suitcases. "I hope I won't disturb you, my dears," she said, casting a critical eye around the hallway. "Alyoshenka said you have plenty of room here." Marina rolled her eyes but remained silent. A week, she thought. Just 1 week. The first few days passed relatively calmly. Tamara Nikolaevna took over the guest room and spent most of her time there, rarely going to the kitchen or bathroom. Marina tried to be a hospitable hostess, cooking dinners, and inquiring about the progress of the renovations. But as a week passed, and then another, it became clear that my mother-in-law was in no hurry. "Tamara Nikolaevna, how are things with your apartment?" Marina asked cautiously one evening. "Oh, it's not like there's a horse lying around," she dismissed. "The builders are so slow, they promised to finish by the end of the month, but I don't believe it." Marina exchanged glances with Alexei, expecting support, but he merely shrugged. "Mom, just live as long as you need," he said. "What's your rush?" From that moment on, Marina's life turned into a nightmare. Tamara Nikolaevna seemed to spread her wings and began to remake someone else's life to suit her own needs. She rearranged the furniture in the living room, claiming it was more ergonomic. She threw out Marina's favorite mugs because they were tasteless. She placed porcelain elephants from her collection throughout the apartment. But worst of all, her mother-in-law was completely untidy. She left dirty dishes in the sink, scattered things around, and didn't clean up after herself in the bathroom. The apartment, which had recently been sparkling clean, now resembled a dump. "Alexei, talk to your mother," Marina pleaded after a month of this. "It's unbearable. She's turning our house into a pigsty." "You're exaggerating," her husband dismissed. "Mom's just used to living her own way. Besides, she makes my favorite cutlets." "To hell with the cutlets," Marina snapped. "I clean every day, and the next morning everything's a mess again." Alexei just shrugged and went off to watch TV with his mother. Weeks passed, then months. No one even thought about renovating Tamara Nikolaevna's apartment anymore. Her mother-in-law seemed to have firmly established herself in their lives. She bossed around the kitchen, criticized Marina at every opportunity, and turned her husband against her. "Alyoshenka, you've lost so much weight. Marina isn't feeding you at all," she'd ask loudly at dinner. "I'm actually here," Marina muttered through her teeth. "Oh, my dear, I didn't even notice you," her mother-in-law would reply with feigned surprise. By the 8th month of her visit, Marina was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She'd lost weight, there were dark circles under her eyes, and her work was falling apart. The mortgaged apartment she'd invested so much time and money into had turned into Tamara Nikolaevna's cluttered lair. The final straw was an incident with Marina's beloved ficus. The plant, grown from a small cutting, was her pride and joy. Then one day, she returned from work to find it missing. "Where's my plant?" she asked her mother-in-law, who was sitting on the sofa knitting. "I threw that freak out. It's just dust and I'm allergic," Tamara Nikolaevna replied calmly. Marina felt something inside her break. "That was my ficus in my apartment," she said quietly but firmly. "Oh, what's the big deal?" her mother-in-law snorted. "If you don't like it, get lost. Ilyoshenka can live without you." At that moment, Alexei returned home. He found his wife in tears and his mother, unperturbed, continuing to knit. "What's going on here?" he asked. "Your mother threw out my ficus and told me to get out of here if I didn't like it," Marina blurted out. "Mom, did you really say that?" Alexei asked hesitantly. "Well, maybe she did say it in anger," Tamara Nikolaevna shrugged. "But she started it first, attacking me over some weed." "That's not grass, that's a plant I've been growing for 5 years," Marina screamed. "Don't yell at my mother," Alexei suddenly raised his voice. "She's older than you and deserves respect." Marina looked at her husband for a long moment. "You know what?" she said quietly. "I'm really going to leave right now." She turned and went into the bedroom. 15 minutes later, Marina emerged with a small bag. "Where are you going?" Alexei asked, confused. "Away from here," she replied, heading for the door. "Let him go," Tamara Nikolaevna snapped. "He'll cool down and come back." Where else could she go? Marina silently left the apartment. Her bag contained the most essential things: documents and bank cards. She decided to pick up the rest later when the couple was out. After going downstairs, Marina called a taxi to the airport. On the way, she called her old friend Svetlana, who had moved to Turkey 2 years ago. "Sveta, remember you invited me over for a vacation? I'll be arriving tomorrow on a morning flight," she said. "What happened?" her friend asked anxiously. "I'll tell you later. Right now I just need to escape." At the airport, Marina bought a ticket for the next flight to Antalya. Before boarding, she called work and took 2 weeks of unpaid leave. Then she turned off her phone and checked it in her luggage. She didn't want her husband to track her whereabouts. Only on the plane, looking out at the city at night, did Marina realize how exhausted she had been after these past few months. She closed her eyes and slept peacefully for the first time in a long time. In Antalya, she was met by a tanned and thinner Svetlana. "God, who do you look like?" her friend gasped, seeing Marina's haggard face. "What did that jerk do to you?" "Not him but his mother," Marina smiled bitterly. "Although he's not bad either." In Svetlana's cozy apartment with a sea view, Marina finally relaxed. She told her friend the whole story of her escape. "So what are you going to do now?" Svetlana asked. "I don't know," Marina answered honestly. "But I definitely won't go back to that clique. By the way, before I left, I called a locksmith and changed the locks on the door." "Oh," Svetlana whistled. "They don't know. They'll find out when they get back," Marina shrugged. Alexei left for work this morning, and his mother went shopping. I turned on my phone for a couple minutes before the flight. There were already 3 missed calls from my husband. As if I knew for sure, 3 hours after her flight, the phone rang again. "Where are you?" Alexei's worried voice rang out. "Oh, Turkey. My mother and I can't get into the apartment. The key doesn't fit." "I changed the locks," Marina answered calmly. "This is my apartment in case you've forgotten, and I don't want it to turn into a pigsty." "Are you crazy?" Alexei yelled. "Where are we going to live now?" "I don't know," Marina answered. "Maybe your mother's apartment. The renovations there were finished a long time ago, right?" There was silence on the line. "Where are you from?" Alexei began. But Marina interrupted him. "I called your building's management company 3 months ago. There was no flood. Your mother made it all up so she could move in with us. Marina, let's discuss everything when you get back." Alexei's voice became ingratiating. When's your return flight? I haven't decided yet, she replied. Maybe in a week, maybe in a month. Or maybe I'll stay here. Sveta says, there are good prospects for designers here. You can't do this to me. A note of panic crept into her husband's voice. But what about our marriage? What about our marriage? Marina smiled bitterly. You chose your mother's side in all our conflicts. I'm secondary to you and always have been. That's not true, Alexei protested. It's true, Marina said firmly. And you know what? I'm filing for divorce. What? But I'll send you the papers by mail. And yes, you can pick up your things whenever it's convenient for you. I'll leave the keys with the concierge in a week. Bye, Alexei. She hung up and stretched out blissfully on the sun loungers. For the first time in months, Marina felt free. 2 weeks in Turkey flew by. Marina sunbathed, swam, and strolled along the embankment. Svetlana introduced her to her friends, including Zemel, the owner of a small design studio. I like your work, he said after looking through Marina's portfolio. Would you like to collaborate on a project? Marina agreed and, to her surprise, found herself drawn into the work. The orders kept coming, and by the end of the second week, Jaimel offered her a permanent position at the studio. Think about it, he said. The salary is twice what it is in Moscow. We'll pay for the rent and have year-round sunshine. Marina promised to think about it. Upon returning to Moscow, the first thing she did was go to the apartment. Inside everything was perfectly tidy. Alexei had clearly taken the trouble to clean it before her arrival. Marina, he rushed to her. The moment she crossed the threshold. I missed you so much. Onlev. Cleaned everything. Let's start over. Marina glanced around the apartment. Yes, it was clean, but something inside her was irrevocably broken. Alexei, I've already filed for divorce, she said calmly. And I'm going to work in Turkey for at least a year. What? But why? Her husband's face twisted with resentment. I did everything you wanted. It's too late, Marina shook her head. I was offered an interesting job and I accepted. And our relationship, it ended when you allowed your mother to humiliate me in my own home. I will improve, Alexei pleaded. Give me a chance. No, Marina said firmly. I don't love you anymore. A month later, the divorce was finalized. Marina sold the apartment, invested part of the money in real estate in Antalya, and put the rest in a savings account for a rainy day. 3 years flew by. Marina settled into Turkey, learned the language, and made new friends. Her career at the design studio was taking off, and her relationship with Zemaliai had grown into something more than just a professional one. One day, while walking along the embankment, she saw a familiar figure. Marina! Alexei called out. Is it really you? He had changed a lot, looked older, and had acquired a small beer belly. Hello, Alexei, she replied calmly. What brings you here? I'm on vacation, he said with his mother. Marina couldn't help but smile. You're still together, I see. Alexei looked down, embarrassed. Yes, we rent an apartment. After the divorce, I never remarried. And how's your mother? Still just as active? Marina asked. Getting older, Alexei sighed. My personality hasn't improved. Sometimes I think you were right about everything. Marina, came Zeimel's voice, approaching them with 2 ice cream cones. I got you some pistachio ice cream, just the way you like it. Meet. Marina smiled. This is Alexei, my ex-husband. And this is Jaimel, my current husband. The men shook hands. Jaimel put his arm around Marina's shoulders, handing her the ice cream. It was nice to meet you, but we have to go, he said. They're waiting for us at the restaurant. Today is our wedding anniversary. Are you married? Alexei asked in surprise. Congratulations. Thank you, Marina nodded. I wish you happiness too, Alexei, and try to start your own life. Believe me, Cuckoo, it's worth it. She waved goodbye and walked along the embankment with her husband, clinging to his shoulder. A happy smile lit up her face. And somewhere in the hotel, Tamara Nikolaevna was waiting for her son, ready to once again present him with a list of complaints and demands. But that evening, Alexei returned a different man. The meeting with his ex-wife had changed something in him. "Mom, I want to tell you something," he began, entering the room. "Starting tomorrow, you're living in your own apartment. I'm renting a separate place." "What, Tamara Nikolaevna?" Has she turned pale? "Are you abandoning your own mother?" "No, I'm simply starting to live my own life. For the first time in 39 years. And he really did start. Returning to Moscow, Alexei helped his mother settle into her apartment, while he rented a studio apartment near work. A year later, he met a woman who wasn't afraid to put Tamara Nikolaevna in her place at their very first meeting, and Marina never regretted her sudden flight and the change of locks. Sometimes the most desperate decisions lead to the happiest turns of fate.